Closing a real estate transaction is the moment when everything learned in earlier chapters about contracts, financing, title, agency, and professional practices comes together. The closing event represents the final step where the buyer pays the purchase price, the seller transfers the title, and every promise made in the contract becomes legally fulfilled. To truly understand closing, it helps to revisit what the parties have been working toward since the day the offer was accepted. In earlier chapters, the focus was on how contracts are formed, how financing is obtained, how value is determined, and how professional obligations guide every step of the process. Closing is where each of these components intersects and where the transfer of property officially occurs under the oversight of a neutral third party known as an escrow or closing agent. Escrow defined. To understand closing, we start with the concept of escrow. Escrow is a process that ensures that both parties in a real estate transaction fulfill their obligations before anything of value changes hands. It acts as a safeguard. When a buyer, such as Samuel in our example, submits an offer and it is accepted, the parties open escrow. A neutral third party, known as an escrow agent, holds the deed, the funds, and all documents until the agreed conditions are completed. This prevents the buyer from losing money if the seller refuses to transfer good title, and prevents the seller from giving up the deed while unsure the buyer can pay. Escrow is therefore the structure that protects both sides equally and keeps the transaction impartial. The escrow instructions agreed to by buyer and seller govern what must happen before closing is authorized. Escrow during the sale. During the sale of real estate, escrow ensures a secure exchange. The seller deposits the executed deed that conveys ownership. The buyer deposits the funds necessary to complete the purchase. The escrow agent verifies that all contractual obligations have been satisfied, including inspections, financing, repairs, and title clearance. Only after everything is fulfilled does the escrow agent release the deed to the buyer and the funds to the seller. In this way, the closing process operates like a carefully timed release system. No party is at risk of losing money or property because the neutral agent does not proceed until every condition is met. This structured approach to transferring ownership is especially important because real estate transactions involve significant financial and legal consequences. Escrow and loan servicing. Escrow also applies to the buyer's loan after closing. Most lenders require monthly payments that include principal, interest, property taxes, and homeowners insurance. These payments are known collectively as PITI. The escrow portion of a PITI payment allows the lender to collect funds monthly and pay taxes and insurance directly when they become due. Lenders do this to protect their collateral, which is the property itself. Without insurance, the lender's interest would be at risk if the property were damaged. Without timely payment of taxes, a tax lien could take priority over the lender's lien. By using escrow to manage these payments, the lender reduces risk, and the borrower avoids the stress of large annual bills. It becomes a predictable part of home ownership. The closing event. Closing is the final step where everything becomes official. At closing, the buyer delivers the purchase price, the seller transfers the title, and the lender, if involved, funds the loan. Contract terms are verified, documents are signed, and the title company or escrow agent records the deed with the county recorder to make the transfer legally effective. Although closings vary by state, the underlying purpose is always the same: to finalize the transaction in a legally sound and orderly manner. In Arizona, for example, closings are conducted through escrow rather than face-to-face meetings, which means buyer and seller may complete their required tasks separately. Regardless of the state's process, closing is always the moment when ownership changes hands. Customary practices. Although each state has different customs, they all rely on the same basic principles of fairness and documentation. Some states require that sellers purchase the title policy, while others require that buyers do so. In Arizona, the buyer pays for the lender's title insurance policy, while the parties may negotiate responsibility for the owner's policy. Common to all states is the requirement that the title company ensure that the buyer receives marketable title free of undisclosed liens or claims. Title insurance provides protection against undiscovered title defects, such as forged deeds, unpaid tax liens, or recording errors. The closing process ensures that any existing liens are satisfied or cleared before the buyer takes ownership. Time frames are essential in closing. Contracts often set the close of escrow within 30 to 60 days after acceptance, allowing time for inspections, loan approval, appraisal, and document preparation. When a contract states that time is of the essence, the deadlines become strict legal commitments rather than general expectations. Failure to meet deadlines without proper cure notice can result in contract breach. For example, if a buyer fails to close by the deadline and is properly cured by the seller may cancel the transaction or retain earnest money depending on contract terms. Agents must be vigilant in monitoring deadlines, including holidays and weekends that may affect recording times or availability of escrow personnel. Location. Closings may take place at a title company office, a lender's office, an attorney's office, or through fully remote signing with a mobile notary. In an escrow state such as Arizona, the buyer and seller do not meet in person. Instead, they sign separately, often days apart. The escrow agent then coordinates final signatures, receives loan funds, and schedules recording. The county recorder's office must process the deed to complete the transfer, so timing must be planned carefully in relation to weekends and holidays. Parties at closing. The key participants in closing include the buyer, the seller, and the escrow or closing agent. Additional parties may include the real estate brokers, attorneys, title officers, and lender representatives. Not all parties need to be physically present as long as legally executed documents are provided. Often, especially in Arizona, closing is completed without all parties meeting together. What matters is the accurate execution, delivery, and recording of documents. The closing process. The closing process includes confirming that both parties have satisfied all contractual requirements. The escrow agent reviews the purchase contract, verifies completion of inspections and repairs, confirms loan approval, and ensures that funds are in place. The lender prepares loan documents, the buyer signs them, and the lender wires funds to title. The seller provides payoff statements for existing loans and signs the deed. The escrow agent prepares a final settlement statement showing charges and credits to both parties. After all documents are signed and funds verified, the escrow agent records the deed and disperses payments according to instructions. Transfer of title before closing. The seller must deliver clear and marketable title. This means providing a deed free of undisclosed encumbrances. The title company conducts a detailed title search to uncover liens, claims, restrictions, easements, and other title defects. If any issues are found, such as an unpaid contractor's lien, they must be resolved before closing. The seller typically signs an affidavit confirming that no new liens or legal issues have arisen since the title search. The buyer may also review a survey showing boundaries, encroachments, easements, and flood zone information. Once title is confirmed to be acceptable, the seller signs and deposits the deed with escrow. Recording the deed makes the transfer official. Transfer of funds. The buyer deposits earnest money, down payment funds, and loan proceeds to escrow. The escrow agent collects these funds, verifies totals, and ensures that all charges are paid, including title fees, lender fees, taxes, insurance premiums, commissions, and prorations, such as HOA dues. Funds are never released until the deed is recorded. This protects both parties and ensures proper legal order. Escrow procedures. In an escrow closing, all funds and documents are deposited by the parties and held until conditions are met. If the buyer rejects title or fails to bring necessary funds, the escrow may not close. Escrow instructions outline procedures for cancellation, return of funds, and restoration of the original ownership status if closing cannot occur. This system allows for a neutral, rules-based process that prevents one party from gaining an unfair advantage. Lender closing requirements. Because the property is collateral for the loan, the lender has specific requirements. The lender typically requires a property appraisal, termite inspection, hazard insurance, title insurance, and sometimes private mortgage insurance. The lender also verifies that no liens take priority over its mortgage, and that all repairs required by underwriting have been completed. The loan cannot fund until the lender receives all required documents from escrow and confirms the buyer's final financial approval. Broker's role. The real estate broker continues to guide the process from contract to closing. This includes coordinating inspections, ensuring timely delivery of disclosures, arranging repairs, and monitoring contractual deadlines. Brokers are also responsible for ensuring accuracy of transaction documents and sometimes reporting the sale to the IRS. In transactions involving a non-resident seller, brokers may need to comply with federal withholding requirements. A broker also ensures that clients receive copies of all closing documents, disclosures, and records for personal files and future reference. Arizona-specific closing example. Jamie's purchase of a newly constructed home illustrates the Arizona approach to closing. She receives required builder disclosures, conducts inspections, deposits earnest money into escrow, and proceeds through the escrow timeline. The title company conducts a title search, going back decades to ensure no defects exist. Jamie signs loan documents and a deed of trust. The builder signs the deed, transferring ownership. Once all parties complete their obligations and the deed is recorded, escrow officially closes and Jamie becomes the legal owner. Review summary. Closing is the final step of the real estate transaction, where ownership transfers from seller to buyer. Escrow provides the safety mechanism, ensuring both parties perform their obligations before anything of value transfers. Escrow is used both during the sales process and for the ongoing management of taxes and insurance through PD payments. Title must be clear and marketable. Funds must be deposited. Lender requirements must be satisfied. And all contractual conditions must be met before closing can occur. The closing agent coordinates documentation, fund transfers, and recording. Brokers play a vital role in guiding clients, monitoring deadlines, and ensuring compliance with legal and professional standards. In Arizona, closings are performed in escrow, and recording is the final step that legally transfers ownership. Everything learned in prior chapters, contract formation, financing, title work, disclosure, and professionalism, comes together in this final phase. Discussion: why is escrow essential to protecting both buyers and sellers during a real estate transaction? Answer: escrow ensures that neither party gives up something of value until all agreed conditions are met. The seller does not lose the deed while unsure of payment, and the buyer does not lose funds without receiving clear title. It creates a neutral, rule-based process that eliminates risk and facilitates trust. Why does a lender require taxes and insurance to be paid through escrow? Answer: taxes and insurance protect the lender's collateral. Unpaid taxes can lead to a tax lien that takes priority over the mortgage, and lack of insurance exposes the property to catastrophic loss. Escrowing these payments ensures they are paid on time, and the lender's interest is protected. How does a title search protect the buyer before closing? Answer: a title search uncovers liens, claims, easements, restrictions, and other encumbrances that may affect ownership. Identifying these issues before closing allows them to be resolved so the buyer receives clear, marketable title free from undisclosed defects. Why is meeting contractual deadlines critical in the closing process? Answer: deadlines govern inspections, loan approvals, repairs, and closing dates. Missing these deadlines without proper cure notice may constitute breach of contract and could lead to cancellation or loss of earnest money. It ensures timely and lawful completion of the process. Closing remarks. The closing event is the culmination of every principle you have studied so far. It weaves together disclosure obligations, contract law, financing, title insurance, agency duties, and ethical conduct. Closing is not simply the end of the transaction. It is the moment when the real estate professional ensures accuracy, fulfills fiduciary duties, protects their clients' interests, and upholds the integrity of the industry. A well-managed closing results in a smooth transfer of ownership and a positive experience for both buyer and seller, while a poorly managed closing exposes all parties to risk. Mastering the closing process is essential to becoming a competent, reliable, and ethical real estate professional.